注がれた光の雨、瞳に映ったこの世界を守るため立ち向かう。それは心も安全が隅でまた霞み始めてる。決意揺らぎそうでも閉ざされた空、その鍵を壊せばそう握られた刃はまだ持て余されて加速する共鳴が言霊を脈打たせてく。この世界を守るため決意を
All right, and we are live. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning into the stream. Welcome. We have a very special guest here today, co-founder of the Cryptoverse, ChainBoost, ChainGuardians, Rob. Now, a lot of different projects, very expansive ecosystem. I'm super excited to have him on today. It's my first time hosting a live stream with Rob, so I get to have that privilege today. Rob, welcome to the stream. I know you are extremely busy right now with everything happening in the Cryptoverse. How you doing, man? How you holding up?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Thanks for asking, though, Ryan. I think, probably yourself and the marketing team are extremely busy, and obviously the dev team. A lot of my work probably comes in up until the lead up to this point in time. So it's actually kind of felt a little bit weird, like the last day or so. Like I've kind of been a bit more like been able to be a little bit more hands off. So I've probably been like more relaxed than maybe the majority of the team. I don't know whether that's negligible or whether that's just good management. I'll take the latter of the two. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay. I'm doing well, and it's great to see all of the new community members and all the existing community members that were already with us really rally around this. There's been a really positive buzz. I think everybody's excited. So yeah, I mean, I'm doing really well. Thanks, man. How about
Yeah,
you?
I'm doing perfect. Like you said, a lot of you know busy and moving parts in the ecosystem right now. Everything going on with the Cryptoverse. So I'm trying to keep up with it all. I know that you and a lot of the other team members are as well. It's really exciting times, and it's everybody right now is super busy, but it's good busy. I think
Mm,
things are happening, things are moving, and I love to see the progress there. Between
sure.
not just hosting the Cryptoverse land sale coming up next week, but also all the developments that we've had with ChainBoost 2.0,
Mm,
just over the course of the last month leading up to the announcement last week. Like I said,
mm,
a lot of things happening, but a lot of really good positive things. Things are moving. So,
100%.
busy, but doing well.
Good.
And just to touch on that, like us, all the members in the team, the Cryptoverse right now, it's very busy times. A lot of new community members coming into the ecosystem, but it's also very hyped. We got a lot of attention on the Cryptoverse. I don't know if you saw it, but Altcoin Daily and Cointelegraph actually covered the Cryptoverse today. Which Altcoin Daily, it's YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. So a lot of recognition for the Cryptoverse. A lot of eyes
Mm.
being brought into the project. So
It's great. Yeah,
busy
it's
times.
what we need. Exposure. Ever increasing and evolving
Mm-hmm.
community members. It's amazing, and it's sometimes you have to pinch yourself to kind of look back. To kind of take a step back and go, wow, look at the kind of evolution of the project and the ecosystem and the community. It's yeah, and thank you to those. You know, Media production outlets, Allcoin Daily and Cointelegraph. It's great. This type of exposure is really important for us. Obviously, reach a lot of eyes, and yeah, so we're massively grateful for that. And I haven't actually seen the content myself already yet, but I will make sure I check it out after the live stream. So thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, definitely. And for anybody out there who wants to check out the content as well, just if you look up Altcoin Daily Cryptoverse on Twitter, on YouTube, it'll be right there. And we'll repost it on the ChainBoost webs or on the ChainBoost Twitter as well. So that way, if you want to take a look, just go to the ChainBoost Twitter. Very easy access from there. Now, before we get too deep into the questions, too deep into the conversation, for anybody who is tuned in for the first time on one of the ChainBoost live streams, what we typically like to do, I have a couple questions that I want to ask Rob myself. But over the course of the live stream, we are going to be doing giveaways. We're going to be giving away some stablecoin rewards. We're also going to be giving away some Cryptoverse whitelistings as well. So that way, anybody who has their questions answered during the live stream, if you win one of those little whitelisting spots, you'll have access to the private access in the VIP round of the Cryptoverse land sale that is going to be happening next week. So if you have any questions for Rob, any questions for myself, make sure you drop it in the chat. And if we select it, we're just going to ask for your Twitter handle so that way we can get in touch with you after the live stream and coordinate your prize. Now, Rob, first question I have for you is you have a very extensive background when it comes to different metaverse projects. I know that you've been involved in a couple. If you don't mind filling in the community, what's kind of your background with the Metaverse, and maybe some of your work with Sandbox, Decentraland. How did you get your start in the Metaverse as a whole?
Yeah, I think I mean, not had huge amounts of exposure to Sandbox. Tried to participate in the land sale a couple of times there. Sadly, couldn't get in. One time there seemed to be a technical issue. Another time I wasn't about at the exact time it needed to happen. But anyway, yeah, I follow Sandbox closely. But Decentraland for sure. That's kind of where my roots are. In 2017, late 2017, when I kind of first started like spending a lot of my time in and around the crypto and blockchain space, I found Decentraland. Got involved in every way that I could. I loved the disruptive potential and the kind of, not only that, but the visionary kind of forward thinking magnitude of what Decentraland was aiming to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, I missed their Terraformer event by like a day or two.
Oh,
I was
no.
devastated. I knew about the sale, but I was away and I couldn't get there. And then by the time I was there, it was they closed the sale because of the demand. Really, it was a case of that. They wanted to close the sale early, so I missed out. Fortunately, managed to make relationships with trusted community members, and they sold me some land. It was really difficult to transfer kind of NFTs back then, and it was quite a tough one. In some cases, you even had to interact with the contract directly via ABI and stuff and whatever. So that was all interesting. But yeah, I built really good relationships with two really key people in Decentraland, and ended up on the Decentraland University board, which is one of the bigger districts in Decentraland. As a result of really, obviously, having an educational background, and consulting on like the different types of tools and different types of educational content that might be found in the Decentraland University, and a variety of other sort of tasks, really. Similar with Vegas City, I got involved there as much as I could, as well as one of the other bigger districts, and I was part of the team there for a little while, and did everything I could to support in some of the early building as a result of my network. So yeah, really fell in love with Decentraland and the community. I still have really close relationships there, still keenly watching what goes on there. Sadly, don't get a chance to go to any of the events these days because of how busy I'm with obviously our stuff. But yeah, as a result of those experiences, I've got have a really good kind of insight into what are the kind of positives, what are the of virtual worlds and metaverses on different areas that might need addressing in terms of challenges, and of course, because we're so early, there are a huge amount of challenges, just like there's a huge amount of positives. So yeah, really excited as a result of those learnings. I can directly kind of utilize them to ensure that Cryptoverse is as successful as it possibly can be.
Yeah, and to touch on that, like you mentioned, it is still very, very early as far as the metaverse space goes. We've gotten a lot of attention on metaverse. Like if you've gone to Token 2049, I know last year, if you've gone to any kind of crypto or blockchain or NFT convention in the last 6 months, the word metaverse is very, very polarizing. It's such a big concept right now, but everybody has their eyes on it just because of all the developments that we've had with Decentraland, Sandbox, but also Facebook starting to get into the metaverse space as well. So everybody is talking about the metaverse as as a whole, as a concept. So it's really cool to see with your history, not just with the Cryptoverse and launching our own metaverse, but also being involved with different metaverse projects in the past, being able to take those experiences, what went really well, what maybe didn't work so well, and being able to compile it into this one new project that we're launching, the Cryptoverse. So one thing that I think you also called out as well, there's some things that have been done very, very positively, some things that maybe haven't worked. And whether it is a project that is already launched or a project that is currently launching, there's a lot of different lessons that we can't learn. So fast forwarding to September, which coincidentally enough, that was actually a little bit before we got all this attention on the metaverse, before Facebook announced that they were starting to get into the space as well. September, that's when we initially announced the Cryptoverse. I believe it was part of It was part of our Dev Week initiatives, day 7. It was this gigantic announcement like, hey, ChainGuardians is creating a metaverse. It's a different project. It's called the Cryptoverse. I am curious, how long was the Cryptoverse in the plans for the ChainGuardians ecosystem before? Kind of pulling from your past experiences with metaverses. Was it always something that we were going to be involved in, or was it something that after your experience with those different projects, you're like, you know what, I want to get involved in that too, and I think we can do a better job? So.
Yeah, some really good questions. I think from my perspective, it was always a dream. It was one of my dreams to kind of build a metaverse. From being involved in Decentraland since 2017. It wasn't like many dreams for everybody. It's not something that you know whether or not will be realized. And of course, it's a bit like people growing up in England. It's like, oh, I dreamt of being a professional footballer. Very few people get to realize that dream. It's a similar sort of thing, maybe on a different sort of scale here. Obviously, you work hard enough for stuff, and we already had good foundations, or we're starting to build good foundations. Maybe it won't quite as out of reach as what other dreams that people may have had in the past are. But for me, it was around that time, 2017, when I saw Decentraland. Wow, I want to be part of a team, a core part of a team that builds a decentralized metaverse as I want to see it. And Decentraland definitely had parts of that, but it wasn't exactly as I wanted to see it. Obviously, it was very focused on low poly environments and stuff, and that it's amazing. I never speak, but it's a different type of metaverse that I wanted to be building. So from my perspective, when we started ideating in ChainGuardians in 2018, before formally launching in Jan 2019 with Emma and Idon, my mind was always looking forward. I would love for us to be in a position to be part of building one of these virtual worlds, building a metaverse. And so it was always there, but the reality of it was that we probably didn't have the size of the team, the scope, the amount, even the reserves of funding and the experience at that time to pull it off. So it was only something that started to become a real reality, which is kind of ironic when we're talking about a virtual reality here. But it was only something that was starting to become possible probably into mid 2020 or early 2020, and that's when I started to begin really thinking about all of these things that have been going around in my mind since 2017, 2018. I now need to start putting them onto the paper because this might become a real possibility. And when I kind of presented it to Emma and Idon, their response was really positive, which kind of maybe surprised me a little bit. So at that point, that was when we really started to kind of accelerate, the plans to enable us to build the metaverse, to build Cryptoverse.
So early 2020, so definitely a little bit of time ago, two years ago at this point, but obviously, like you mentioned, you were involved with Decentraland and saw what Decentraland was building back in 2017, 2018. And even since then, not just 2017, 2018, but since early 2020, so much new development, and we're so much more technologically capable now as we were a couple of years ago. And even back then, we were in this space where there were some alternative for smart contract platforms other than Ethereum, but Ethereum was still like the big player, the smart contract platform. Nobody was building on anything but Ethereum. But even now, you have different options. You have Polygon, you have Avalanche, you have BNB chain. So even the technological capabilities now compared to where we were 2 years ago, it's far exceeded expectations, I think, just because you have all these different options. You have all these different chains, these NFT portals that can access different chains. So it's definitely cool to see just over that short amount of time the developments that have taken place. And just thinking, if all that's happened over the course of the last 2, 3, 4 years, how much more can happen in that same amount of time moving forward. So I think it's really interesting the kind of advancements that we could see, not just in the metaverse space as a whole, but also with the Cryptoverse space moving forward too. So kind of segueing into my next question, I want to get into the nitty gritty. I want to talk about the Cryptoverse. For anybody who might not be familiar with the Cryptoverse, can you explain a little bit about what the Cryptoverse is? So what the project is, and maybe a little bit about the kind of long-term vision that you have for the Cryptoverse and what you want to see with the project moving forward.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's always a really difficult question to answer, this one, but yeah, it's probably one of the most important. So, like, what is the Cryptoverse? What is the vision for the Cryptoverse? Where do you see it going? Um, and in many ways, it's kind of impossible to answer. And the reason that it's kind of impossible to answer those questions is because it's a decentralized virtual world, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be built by the users, or at least in large. So I don't know what the users are going to want to build. I have a good idea based on what my experiences are. I don't know what, when governance is slowly implemented, what the users might decide for this world either. So, there is an element of the unknown which we can't get away from. But in terms of, what I, what I feel is my vision for Cryptoverse, and what I feel is a general reflection and kind of sentiment or collective unconsciousness across the wider community for the direction of what people want to see the metaverse go, is that they want to see um, a metaverse which bridges the gap between, brands and, real world experiences, traditional finance or traditional web experiences, games, and, and intersect with the beauty of the blockchain and the principles of decentralization and governance and permissionlessness, provable ownership, etc. And Cryptoverse is designed to um, straddle or walk that line, really, to work with brands and work with development companies and art houses and studios and everything, everything around that, that have got wonderful kind of long or centuries old kind of, or decades old pedigree of brand and quality, and invite them and work with them to bring them into the metaverse, whilst simultaneously providing opportunity for the community, the cryptoversians, to be building their own experiences and create this kind of melting pot or fusion of what I think is, like, really a metaverse of everything. And that's always what I kind of use as the kind of pitches. It's a metaverse of everything. It means that, like, everything that should be in a metaverse, social kind of experience, immersivity in terms of, like, exploration and virtual reality, gamification layers, social layers, incentivization mechanisms, provable ownership, interoperability, multi-chain capacity. All of this is the long-term vision. But of course, it'll take a long time to develop this, and even really good planning, amazing management and execution with really high quality talent to develop these things. But that's the vision.
Okay, so as you mentioned, interoperability, the aspect of decentralization. You even mentioned, governments coming into play, and I think it's all super crucial for the vision that you're outlining, that decentralized metaverse aspect. If I remember correctly, just kind of going through your Twitter, when when Meta announced that they were going to start getting into the space as well, you had a lot of comments on just the decentralization aspect. So having that aspect of being able to let builders build what they want to build, incorporating governance into it, incorporating that multi-chain future to allow for further decentralization, it's all super critical to the development. So I like that you have that vision of, hey, we want to create this space ultimately for everybody to create what they want to create. And having that decentralized aspect of it, it's super critical. Now, I do want to take 1 second here. There is an audience question from Zero Donto Gaming. It might be Odonto Gaming. I apologize if I butcher that. They're just asking, will we be able to use CGG to buy land? And the answer to that, yes. If you are on ChainBoost specifically, you will be able to use CGG to buy land. Doesn't matter what parcel size, but ultimately what's going to happen is if you use CGG to purchase that land, it'll automatically convert the value of CGG to the dollar amount of the land at the time of your purchase. and you'll be able to buy land using that tool there. Now, the cool thing with that is if you choose to build or choose to buy more than just a single parcel, if you're buying an estate, you're also going to get a Genesis transport vehicle as well, one of Bitsy's bikes. Now, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong. Do we have a name for Bitsy's bike at this point? Or are we just calling it Bitsy's bike for now and naming it later? Or do we have a name
No,
for that?
so obviously for those that don't know, we've got within the ecosystem there is a wonderful world builder. She's called Fran. She goes by Mithriel. Shout out to Fran if she's listening, as I do know she likes to look in. So she's named the bike, and I believe it is Cypher Siphon. If I'm not mistaken. I'm just trying to see if I can pull it up here. Cypher Siren. Cypher Siren.
Cypher Siren.
Named. The meaning behind which, I don't know. You'd have to ask her. But I like it. It's got a ring to it and it's cool.
Yeah. And I actually see Fran in the chat here. She says Cypher Siren as well. So Fran, if you don't mind, if you're in the chat, let us know the origin of that name. If you type ChainGuardians in that, or if you're typing that out, tag ChainGuardians so that way we can communicate it to the rest of the stream as well. Because I think a lot of people would be curious to know just kind of the origins of the name there. But ultimately, yes, it is Bitsy's bike. So Zero Danto, make sure that you drop your Twitter handle in the comment box here. We will reach out to you to coordinate your rewards. But yes, you will be able to buy land with CGG specifically on ChainBoost. So it doesn't matter what size, but if you buy an estate, you will be able to get one of Bitsy's bikes as well. So speaking of CGG, does kind of perfectly segue into my next question. That wasn't even planned, but I did want to ask, with the Cryptoverse, obviously you made it pretty clear with the initial light paper that we released that CGG was going to play an integral role in the Cryptoverse. So if you don't mind me asking, what went into the decision to utilize CGG specifically in the Cryptoverse versus maybe creating some kind of secondary token and having that be specific to the Metaverse?
Yeah, so I think that the decision for CGG to remain the governance token for Cryptoverse was really straightforward, really easy. CGG governs the RPG, or it will. The same for said of ChainBoost. The same will be said for the NFT mining and any other product or project within the overall full stack of the ecosystem. So that was really kind of easy decision to make. Secondly, the second factor in this was that it's already publicly tradable. There's a decent amount of supply out there, so users that are coming into the ecosystem have opportunity to ascertain it fairly early on and start to participate in governance of the world that they've become part of. So again, a really kind of easy step to take there in terms of it's there. It's not something the users have to wait for. They can get a foothold in really quickly. And finally, as well, it's at the stage where the token is effectively going to be completely decentralized in the sense that obviously early tokens buyers are often used at the beginning of a project's or token's life cycle. We are pretty much at the end of that now. So any of the earlier token buyers whom either kept hold or decided to move out their wealth or revenue from that to a different token or whatever it may be, is pretty much at the end of its life cycle now. So we also felt as though sense that this is a token that's going to be increasingly belonging to the community and to become more decentralized, whereas with a secondary token, you typically will have to reset that cycle somewhat. Now, of course, there's a massive amount of assessment ongoing across the full stack in terms of the tokenomic structure. I don't want to say too much about that because
All right, can everybody hear me? Can everybody see
I
me?
can hear you, Ryan. Yeah.
All right, sorry about that. Having some technical difficulties with the stream here. All right, so Rob, if you don't mind, I think we were talking about CGG, the token. We were talking about it being utilized across the ecosystem. If I recall correctly, just so I can kind of pick things where we left off, I believe what we're talking about is CGG is already a token that's out there. It's already tradable on the market. So, part of the idea of utilizing CGG versus creating, a secondary token was also to maintain the decentralized aspect of CGG and at the same time not reset the token cycle as well. Correct?
Yeah, exactly right. So I think those were two of the bigger factors, and I think the only final thing that I alluded to is that I'm working with key members of the team. We're still kind of assessing the tokenomic structure and design across the ecosystem. So there's going to be more to come. But one thing that is really abundantly clear is that CGG will absolutely remain the governance token across the ecosystem. So yeah. That's obviously important to know.
Okay, perfect. Now, to touch on that a little bit further, we talked about it a little bit earlier on, but I want to kind of revisit something that you mentioned, the ability to have this kind of multi-chain metaverse as well. So, interacting with different chains as part of the metaverse. CGG specifically, for anybody that doesn't know, CGG is already on Ethereum. It's already on BNB chain. It's already on Polygon. And I know that there's other chains that we are currently integrating as well, specifically to ChainGuardians. But with the Cryptoverse, how are these different chains all going to be interacting with the Cryptoverse? So, how is Ethereum, Binance, or BNB chain, Polygon, maybe Avalanche, how are they going to play a role in the Cryptoverse as well?
Yeah, so I think for anybody who's been part of the full stack ecosystem for some time, they'll note that actually, from a law perspective and a world building perspective, the different chains play quite an integral part anyway, because the guardian characters are the superheroes, the defenders of those chains or major projects which exist across the the crypto space or the blockchain space, ergo the cryptoverse, right? So even from a world building perspective, there's some really important tie-ins there. But obviously, of course, there is also the technological side of the technological considerations. So there are, without a doubt, each chain, each protocol typically has its strengths or its weaknesses. It could be, one has got a really good UI UX but not be very decentralized. Could be one has a really strong developer community, whereas one relies quite heavily on its in-house resources. There's a number of different factors. But the key thing is that obviously each of these chains has their own kind of community, their own really strong, unique selling point, and we don't want to starve community members, cryptoversians, of the opportunity to interact with these different chains. So in terms of how it will play into the cryptoverse, well, there's several ways. We're speaking with a number of different chains currently who are keen on having experiences for their communities with inside metaverses, with inside the cryptoverse. Obviously, with regards to what we're speaking about here. So we're looking into kind of the opportunity for sponsorships and brand experiences that relate to their particular chain for their community to come in and explore, but also simultaneously for excuse me, cryptoversians to also enjoy. And secondly, obviously, the integration of their technology where it makes sense, whether that be for transactional purposes, whether that be for specific NFTs which exist on their chain for gamification purposes. Even obviously in some cases it's not typically as relevant, but even maybe DeFi, if DeFi protocols are integrated into the cryptoverse. So there's a lot of different kind of ways in which multi-chain is going to be really prevalent to cryptoverse. Another example would be wallets as well. Some users prefer different wallets, and again, we want to ensure that users are having a really fluid, seamless kind of experience that they're familiar with and will enjoy. And at the same time, educate themselves about. They might not have ever known exactly what the potential of Avalanche is, or Polygon, or Elrond, or whatever it is, and then they, you know, from our learning of educating community members around these chains, and at the learning of our developers ourselves, often it's about going, wow, okay, we didn't quite realize that this chain had this functionality, and so on. So there's a lot of different reasons as to why this is. We take our role quite seriously in terms of blockchain education and technological education in general as well. So all of these different factors tie into how and why Cryptoverse is going to be multi-chain.
Yeah, and I like that you touched on, not just integrating change for the sake of it, but also being able to, maximize user experience by pulling from these specific abilities that each chain might have. Like some chains that might be better off for DeFi applications, some for transactional purposes, like you mentioned. Others, maybe for environmental purposes and having more of a carbon neutral or even like a carbon negative aspect to it. Just people, and especially with the art community, a lot of people have expressed hesitations just getting into NFTs or getting into metaverses because certain chains are more environmentally impactful than others. So being able to pull different chains, integrate those into the cryptoverse that have less of an environmental impact, more carbon neutral, I think it all ties together very, very well. It creates much more of a holistic ecosystem, being able to integrate these different chains for their specific strengths. So ultimately, it just maximizes user experience, and it makes it so it's as clean, as fluid as possible, and that that way users don't have to worry about these kind of real world aspects tying in. All they got to do, log in, enter the cryptoverse, and some of these aspects like transactional purposes, environmental impact, seamless. Don't even need to worry about it. So I like that aspect of it. Now, another question that I have for you, and when I was reading the light paper specifically, this was something that really kind of caught my eye, is the land sharding tool. So just the ability to shard land. Can you explain to the audience a little bit about what that is, and maybe a little bit about what the users can expect from the land sharding tool that's going to be integrated here?
Yeah, absolutely. So the land sharding tool, which was created in-house by one of our superstars, is a really powerful tool which essentially enables us, the Cryptoverse development team, to achieve ultimate flexibility over the shape, sizes of the parcels, the estates, and the single parcels. And it's obviously because of the uniqueness of the world, it brings with it more kind of opportunities for different types of experiences in terms of world building and so on. But at the same time also offers community members not only those kind of unique experiences for world building in shapes and sizes, additional monetization opportunities. And what I mean by that is, if you've bought a single parcel, and the average one, say, being 56 by 56 meters, and it is an average because the whole world is the entire Cryptoverse is pretty much unique. So it's not like like a sandbox or a DCL. You have a square, that's the parcel, and they're all the exact same sizes. You put them together, you get the estate. No, it doesn't work like that. Each of the estates and the parcels, they all range because everything's completely unique. You could use the square root to achieve square foot and so on, because you're working in cubes. But in a unique universe, it's probably something like pi is more appropriate, 3.142, to be working out square roots. So you start to generate these kind of mathematical kind of layers. But the principal beauty is that the land sharding tool actually affords ultimate flexibility for sharding and compiling, meaning that if you're some user that's got a 56 by 56 meter average sized single parcel, you would actually be able to shard that into, say, 5 10 by 10s meter parcels, We haven't spoken too much about that potential of that tool yet because we didn't want to confuse users. Obviously, it's a lot to wrap your head around. Even just to think about it's an estate, and then there's average estates, and then there's parcels, and there's average parcels, and then how many parcels in this estate, and it can become quite the messages and the education can become quite convoluted. I mean, these are things that we've been working on for 9 months, long time, and have taken lots of us a long time to get our heads around. So we didn't want to kind of like overflow users with information. But one thing that's really key is that what the message that we want to come across here is that this tool exists, and there is an additional layer which affords users the ability to shard things even further down. So from a monetization point of view, it could be you'd work with a content creator and say, I will allow you to use half of my land or half of this parcel for nothing to build something on it. And if you monetize it, then you can, pay me an amount of revenue or whatever it would be based on your earnings. Or it could be that you want to sell half in the future to get return on investment. It could be that you want to change the shape of your land slightly. Now, obviously, that'd be a custom request, but all of these things are perfectly achievable, whereas every other metaverse is really static in terms of the world that's been created. So I don't like to kind of stand us in competition, because obviously other metaverses will have strengths that Cryptoverse doesn't have, but that's the intention of that tool, and that's the power of that tool that we've created.
Yeah, so allows for a little bit more freedom for creativity, and also, as you mentioned, monetary, incentives as well. I think that aspect is it's kind of cool because it integrates something that is, a real world aspect, being able to, shard or, divide up land parcels that hasn't necessarily been touched on in, the digital world yet. So kind of taking that real world concept, integrating it into the metaverse, it's new. It's a concept that not a lot of people have, maybe been educated on it in the real world or the digital world yet. So it's an innovative, new, cool tool that we're going to have that it's just awesome. And, like I said, when I was reading through the white paper, that was one of the things that really, really stood out to me. It's because it's something, in addition to a couple other things that nobody is really doing yet. So just adds a whole new layer to the experience that users are going to be able to have, that customization aspect of it.
Well, and the other thing here is as well is now it allows for an ever-growing amount of users to own digital real estate, because of course you want to balance it off in terms of scarcity. But if you look at, say, another metaverse, say you're a metaverse and you've got 50,000 parcels and they're all 20 by 20 meters, just for argument's sake, you cannot physically have more than 50,000 users own a piece of that digital real estate. It's just not possible because there's only 50,000 available, which is great from a scarcity point of view. But in 10 years' time, if you've got 500,000 users and only 1% of them own that digital real estate, where's their incentive to be part of that world? I mean, yes, of course, there may be some really cool experiences without a shadow of a doubt. And maybe they can try and like rent or anything like this. But it's not really enabling the world to be ready for mass adoption or to evolve into a world which can cater towards mass adoption. So this tool, it doesn't need to be utilized. It's really down to what the community decides to do. If they, if a user's got their single parcel and they don't want to shard it, well done. That's the beauty of it. It's all about flexibility. And of course, as more users come in and the demand grows, there's more opportunity. More people may want to do it at that stage, which is great because it's more power into the community, more opportunities for monetization and ROI potentially. So it's a case of saying that it's setting the world up for success, for growth, and for more users to want to be part of the world. And this is really important because we in terms of what we noticed from our own research and be involved in some of these worlds is that many of them may not have actually, because they were completely unique at those stages, may not be kind of set up for that principle. Now, of course, anyone can go along and fork Decentraland. That it's open source, like quite literally. But how many people are going to do that, or how many have done that? None, because it's for a virtual world or a metaverse to exist, it needs ever evolving, ever growing developer community, and it needs ever growing maintenance and building upon it. So yeah, there was lots of reasons as to why we felt that that tool was a necessity also.
Yeah, and I like that you touch on the aspect of scarcity and the aspect of mass adoption as well. It's no argument. Anybody that's involved in the space, whether it's metaverses, whether it is just play to earn gaming, everybody who's involved in this space in some way, shape, or form are trying to achieve that mass adoption of blockchain gaming to some extent. So, in your example, you had 50,000 land parcels, only 50,000 people would be able to own those parcels. Yeah, you can't have mass adoption if only 50,000 people in this hypothetical scenario are able to be involved. If you're able to shard land, share it, rent it, then all of a sudden you have more and more possibility for users to be involved in the platform. So actually working towards further decentralization and further enabling mass adoption of blockchain gaming, which ultimately is part of the goal.
And I think it's important that I acknowledge there, because I'm sure there's some people who are going, well, you're not quite right there, Robbie, because theoretically an NFT could be sharded, right? As in, we've done the NFTs, the fractionalized NFT stuff with the latest platform, so we know that you could have tokens that represent a shared ownership of a parcel or whatever it may be. But I think what I'm trying to point towards here is more that you can't basically manipulate that space that anymore to present further kind of development or monetization opportunities per se. It's a lot more rigid, whereas this way it's a lot more fluid, and I think that's what I'm trying to point at, really. So I think it's important that I do mention that, to be fair, as well. Okay, perfect.
Now I do want to take the opportunity here to ask a question from the community. I believe the username is Youngin. He's asking a question about something we haven't really touched on, so maybe we should, explain it a little bit first. But Youngin is asking, will the Prana system be similar to the Karma system on Reddit? So, maybe before we, answer a question like that, if you wouldn't mind, just explaining a little bit, what is the Prana system and what role will that play in the Cryptoverse?
Yeah, so Prana, another thing about metaverses is, especially with decentralized metaverses, is how do you police bad actors? Am I going to be really authoritarian, and I'm going to come in and go, I'm going to ban you? Well, what are you banning? Are you banning a digital passport? Are you banning an Ethereum address? It brings up a lot of questions, right? So there is a lot of room for work and a lot of kind of work that needs to be done to balance decentralization in virtual worlds or in metaverses against bad actors and trolls and stuff, right? And I think Prana is designed to have a positive and an optimistic outlook towards trying to encourage users to be engaging with inside the metaverse in productive and meaningful ways, which are which is cemented in incentivization. Having strong Prana will open up certain areas of the metaverse which you might otherwise not be able to go. It'll present earn opportunities which you wouldn't ordinarily or otherwise have. It will allow you to redeem Prana, use Prana to purchase unique wearables or vehicles or a host of kind of other different incentivization mechanisms. So yeah, it's an important first step into policing and encouraging positive engagement and behavior from users inside the metaverse. And yes, it is almost you could say akin to a karma kind of system in that way. So that's what it is, yeah, and that's the purpose of it.
Okay, perfect. So kind of that built-in karma system, like you mentioned, kind of akin to what users can experience on Reddit, but ultimately just having that, keeping the decentralized aspect of a metaverse, but also having that positive or negative karma system involved in there as well to, as you mentioned already, kind of weed out bad actors and people that aren't, behaving appropriately within that space. I do think that's important. So thank you for touching on that. Youngin, if you wouldn't mind, please provide your Twitter handle in the comments. We will reach out to you after the live stream is over for your prize. Now, I do have one more question for you, and then we'll get more into like a rapid fire kind of Q&A type deal and just pull questions from the audience. So if you are looking to participate in that, any questions that are done in this kind of rapid fire Q&A section are going to be eligible for cash prizes, USDC. So get your questions in the chat now, and as always, we'll pull the best questions and we'll have Rob answer them for you here. But before we get into that, Rob, last question that I personally have for you is I want to talk a little bit about the roadmap for the Cryptoverse. Obviously, as you mentioned earlier, Cryptoverse has been in the works since 2020, and at least the development, the concept has been in the works there. But just in the start of 2022 is when we got, social media launch. We're having our land sales, the website's up, the light paper's up. What can users expect over the course of, the next few months, over the course of the remainder of 2022 maybe, from Cryptoverse development? If you could kind of touch on a little bit about what the roadmap entails there.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the big goal for the end of this year or the beginning of next year is to have like an early alpha access available, and we want to keep that like a fairly close knit access. And I think that high level, the thought is at the moment is that if you own land, you'll get opportunity to hop in the world, hopefully by the end of the year, beginning of next year. And the intention is to have the central business district area built out. Think about this like as the initial city, and to have some stock avatars that users can hop in and run about that central business district area. There'll be some opportunities to kind of interact with certain items and aspects of the world, that's the kind of the big goal that we're hoping to achieve. In between that time, from now until then, there's going to be obviously lots of kind of smaller like that community events, where we're going to incentivize users to be sharing their ideas for creation, incentivizing users to engage in kind of like designing different aspects of and voting on different aspects of designs and so on, engaging with the kind of the content creator community, and trying to encourage them to kind of begin their process of thinking about what they're going to be building, and a lot of kind of engagement in that way. The internal marketplace, so users have early opportunities to purchase land if they've missed it, and from the users that are wanting to get liquidity back or whatever it may be, is also very much in the works. Of course, the sales are ongoing throughout this month, so the intention is to have actually the land selection available for users early May. We're in a really good place with that already, so we're hoping we can pretty much open that almost immediately after the sales, so early to mid-May, which is another major development goal. Meanwhile, we've got the content creation team working really hard on on different kind of tools for procedural generation of content and an inventory of assets that users can use to populate their land from an early stage. So that will also be ongoing in the background, and we'll be sharing kind of little snippets of videos of like little snippets of like some maybe even in-world snippets as well, for users to kind of get excited about and have a look at. And we're also planning to have what is like a pop-up experience as well, by hopefully early Q3, which is just an isolated experience where users can hop into a purpose-built environment, which is akin to like like a department store or a fashion show, where users can see avatars kind of trotting up and down in different types of wearables and stuff as well. So we've got a lot planned for this year. There's probably even stuff that has slipped my mind, but the high levels, that's them.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, there is a lot going on. So yeah, if anything did slip your mind, don't worry about it. But I think the important aspects that you touched on The ability for land selection, you said that's happening right around May of this year is kind of the intention, and it seems like everything's on a relatively good track right there. And then CryptoMonk, you asked this question, and I believe Rob provided an answer, being able to walk down a street in the Cryptoverse. I think you mentioned kind of Q4, Q1 of next year, maybe people being able to get into the Cryptoverse for the first time as well, correct?
Yes, yeah, early alpha access, meaning fairly limited tooling, but there's going to be a city area, like a built-out kind of city block or several city blocks, and the some functionalities in terms of interacting with different items. There might be some like little mini games or this type of scenario, and we're going to try and keep that obviously relatively closed, because you just don't want to have like open season there. There's a lot of work to be done around scaling and stress testing and everything. So we're aiming just to have that for the landowners at that stage. But it should give a really good sense of what the world's vision is to feel like, to look like, what it's going to be like to be a part of. All about working up the sensors for users and just like getting them that first look into what it's going to be turned into. And then heading into Q1 of next year, then it's going to be about obviously providing some sort of updated roadmap. Intention would be to continue to provide like additional tools which essentially enable users to start building. So it's going to be a massive focus on the tooling for users to be building their own lands out by early next year as well. Now, the development for those tools will be ongoing throughout this year as well. And if anything, we're ahead of schedule with, we'll probably be having closed testing groups, and there'll be opportunities for communities to be involved, the community be involved in those as well. But you just want to be careful about rolling them out like mass scale and just having open season, because it can just lead to some negative experiences, and then obviously you don't want users having a bad taste in their mouth. You want to make sure that they are enjoying what they signed up for.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think it's important that I think you might have touched on this too. The ability to get into the land, get your feet wet, go into the metaverse for the first time. Ultimately, you want it to be more of a polished, finalized product, because, and I've had this experience with video games in the past. You probably have too, where maybe someone on a team, maybe a project, whether it's traditional gaming or blockchain gaming, they released it a little bit too early when things weren't quite finalized, designs weren't finalized, ultimate plans and visions weren't quite there. It was still in development, and the project flopped after that because they just weren't ready for that stage. So I like the approach there of taking your time with it, building it out, making it much more of that holistic ecosystem that we're talking about here, and then allowing users to get in for that early alpha access once it's much more polished, once it's much more finalized. So I do like that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think one thing to point out too is that obviously the land sales for Decentraland happened late 2017. The actual launch of Decentraland was not until the 20th of February 2020, and I remember because it's 20/02/2020, which is like 2.5 to 3 years after that sale. Just to kind of put into perspective the amount of work and development that goes into getting something like this live. So it is going to be a case of obviously we want users to be excited and involved in all stages of the development process. It is a decentralized metaverse. But unless you're a C++ programmer, or you can build 3D content in Maya and or Blender, for example, which I'm sure there will be these people in our community that are scratching at the bit. And we will try and engage those members as much as possible. But if you're someone like me who's not really got any coding experience, then it's going to be a little bit longer until you've got those really seamless tools to be developing the world out as an individual. So we just need a little bit of patience there, believe in the vision, and just make sure you're staying in touch, because before you know it, we'll be having an early look at the early alpha, and that will be exciting.
Yeah, and you already mentioned it, but that kind of those small little micro clips that you're also thinking about releasing as well. It adds to the hype, and it shows, hey, this is what's currently being developed right now. Here's a little sneak peek. So, what you mentioned with Decentraland, you had the land sale, and then almost 2.5 years later, all of a sudden you're in Decentraland. I think it's important to keep that hype sustained and to have those small little pieces of micro content here and there, small little hype videos, just showing people, hey, this is what's being developed right now, and kind of keeping that excitement level high. Now,
yeah, 100%.
Now, Rob, I do want to get more into the kind of rapid fire Q&A part of the live stream. Just want to know, do you have the YouTube chat open on your computer right now? And
yeah, I opened it when the stream crashed because I thought, is that me? So I opened it then.
Okay, got it. So are there any questions from the chat that specifically stand out to you? And again, for anybody who is asking these questions, if Rob does pick them and he does answer them, you are going to be eligible for cash prizes. Just make sure that you follow ChainBoost on Twitter, so that way we can reach out to you after the live stream. And also, if your question is asked, please provide your Twitter handle in the comment box as well, so we can reach out to the correct person. Now, Rob, are there any questions that are jumping out to you? Anything maybe that we didn't touch on in the live stream that you really want to make sure we talk about here?
Yeah, these questions are awesome, which goes to show. I mean, yeah. So United Monarchy has asked, do you plan on expanding the team at the moment, and is there any undoxed people on the team? One, we're always expanding. It just doesn't seem like we ever stop hiring. I mean, if it's probably Ryan could even testify to that. Of course, like, you always kind of have to consider operational budget versus how many people you're hiring. But yeah, specifically for the Metaverse in particular, the team is definitely continuing to expand quite significantly. Second question, is anybody undoxed? No, not to my knowledge. Everybody is completely open, transparent. It's just a case of sometimes we hire people who don't always announce it, but they're not like private or hidden. It's just, does the community want to know every time somebody's hired? Maybe, I don't know. We could probably do a better job of showcasing that in some ways, maybe. But no, certainly nobody is undoxed. Let's have a look.
Let's see. There was a question from Movie Zone in here as well that I think is really intriguing. So Movie Zone, drop your Twitter handle in the comment section here. What they're asking is, do we have the option to link to other Metaverse worlds or projects? So I believe he's kind of talking about that portal in between the Cryptoverse and maybe other Metaverses like Network, Decentraland, Sandbox. So
yeah, I mean, anything's possible. It's just about whether or not there's incentive to do it for Metaverse A, Metaverse B, whether or not there's incentive for user A and user B to be using said portal. It's perfectly feasible to achieve. That is for sure. But how often it's done? Probably not a lot. I think Decentraland have something with, I think maybe Cryptovoxels, where they have some sort of portal between the two. It's either Cryptovoxels or Somnium. I'm not sure which. I think it's Cryptovoxels. So yeah, it's perfectly achievable. It's just about why. And obviously, long term, it makes perfect sense why. But in the short term, well, even Decentraland is still fairly immature in the grand scheme of things, and so lots of the other metaverses at various stages. It's about, why would a development team spend time, money, resource on doing that if there's no meaningful reason for it in the short term? So long term, yes, totally feasible, and yes, it's definitely part of a longer term plan. Short term, probably not, unless it's something that can be done really easily, achievably, pretty quickly. Hopefully that makes sense, Ryan.
Yes, it does. So Movie Zone, if you haven't already, make sure that you provide your Twitter handle in the comment section. Wow, I can't talk sometimes. All right, Rob, are there any other questions that stand out for you? I think we have time for probably about 2 or 3 more here from the audience.
Yeah, let's have a look.
And of course, it is some user was asking.
United, was it?
Yeah, United Monarchs already had a question that was answered, I believe, and I think they provided their Twitter handle.
Okay. there's a really, I mean, is the one that you found that you like, Ryan?
There's a couple here. Let me
There's
find.
one that I think I'd like to quite like to answer.
Yeah, by all means, please.
So Alex P says, "What are digital items and their role in your metaverse? How can we So I think how can we interact with them? Maybe it will be a special gadget through which you can feel the virtual object or something even more amazing." Digital items. It's obviously an amalgam of the word physical and digital. You get digital, so it's items, where also it's it's assets. It's something that bridges the physical to the digital world, or vice versa, digital to physical. It's something that we've been exploring since kind of 2019. We think it has a really important important role to play in terms of immersive experience into metaverse space. And it's something that we did with watches in 2019, where users own the watch, they tap their phone on the watch, and it would open a web page which verifies them as the proven owner of a said NFT, which is bound to that watch. And the intention is to build into a special move into the RPG that users can execute via that NFT in the RPG. And these types of experiences we think are really important for immersion, and also for kind of just unique experiences that aren't otherwise possible in other technological kind of scopes. So it's a big part of the type of experiences that we're looking to embed into Cryptoverse as well. One such way, one kind of low hanging fruit, easy way to do this is the ability to like purchase a digital wearable, for example, for your avatar in world, and then you would receive the physical version of that for yourself in the real world. But that's just scratching at the surface in terms of what are the realms of possibility, to be completely honest, with the digital and the physical space. We have other plans, but I don't want to go into too much. And the reason for that is because some of the ideas that I have for this I think are really unique, and I don't want anyone stealing those ideas elsewhere. There we go.
Of course, can't have anybody steal it if it's not already something that is finalized and a part of the project already. I think that's important too. That was actually the question that I was trying to find as well. I just couldn't find who asked that question as well. So Alex P, make sure you provide your Twitter handle in the comments so we can reach out to you after the stream. Make sure that you are following ChainBoost so that we can do that as well. There is another question here from, I think it's Siagi Yu. And apologies if you hear some whining. My dog is kind of going off in the background here. Siagi Yu is asking, can Cryptoverse be played on mobile phones? So kind of talking about the mobile implementation of the Cryptoverse. So what are the plans that we have for that in the future, maybe?
Yeah, it's not a short-term solution. The intention for Cryptoverse is it will be accessible via an executable on your computer, because it's Unreal 5, meaning that the quality of the graphics is going to be right up there with some of the best games. That's the intention. So it's not synergistic with mobile phones, which don't have much kind of processing power, because they're only how big, so mobile optimization is possible, but sadly will not be something that is in primary focus for probably a few years, if at minimum, if I'm honest.
Got it. Okay, so realistic expectation there for a couple years from now, but obviously, as you mentioned, it's being built in Unreal 5, so amazing graphics right out of the gate, but ultimately it'll be more PC optimized to begin, and then mobile optimization a couple years down the line there. I think that's important for people to grasp, is that there's a lot of very, very high level technical things that are happening with this space right now with the Cryptoverse. So mobile optimization does take a backseat to that for the short-term future, but long-term plans are in place, it sounds like, to integrate into mobile, but that's just not at the forefront of development plans right now.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, we have time for one more question here. Rob, is there any question here that stands out from you in the chat, or do you want me to just go ahead and find you a question here? Got to make it a really good one here. It's last question
Yeah.
of the live stream before we kind of start heading out here.
Do you know, honestly, there's so many really, really good questions, which is just testament to the quality of the community and the new users that are also coming in as well, that they're really obviously interested and engaged with learning more about Cryptoverse. Ryan, you pick for me. I can't pick. They're all so good.
All right, so there is a question here, and let me make sure that I have this from the right user. They've asked this question a couple different ways, a couple different times in the chat here, but they're asking ultimately about the educational system behind the Cryptoverse. So obviously with you, and you mentioned this earlier in the stream, your background is in more education. And I think what this user was trying to ask, and I'll find their username here in a second, was they were asking about educational tools in the Cryptoverse. So, maybe for first-time users, people who aren't familiar with metaverses or blockchain applications, what kind of educational tools might be available upon entering the Cryptoverse for the first time? So, are there plans to create some kind of educational content around how to navigate the Cryptoverse, like a Cryptoverse 101 kind of a thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a given, hopefully. I mean, if you go into any other metaverse, do you know, as part of my research across metaverses and virtual worlds, I've looked at centralized platforms, I've looked at decentralized platforms, I've played games which have aspects of, metaverse in them, if you like, i.e., avatar representation, i.e., like community driven, monetization, world building, terraforming, import, blah blah blah. And one thing that's really consistent is that across games, across metaverse, across virtual world, there's always some type of educational process for the new users, and I think that's paramount. So without a doubt, that's a given. Exactly how we're going to execute that has not been fully decided yet. Just being completely honest, there's nothing that's kind of off the cards, or off the table, should I say, not off the cards. For me, what I really liked was when I went into, and this is one of the few things because it's mainly a centralized platform, but one of the things I really liked was when I went into um, high fidelity, and I went into this little space and there was little educational kind of tools available, and the main thing was that once I'd kind of looked at those and read them, and I walked through the next, I entered this little corridor space type thing, and the next thing that I saw was a real life user who worked directly for High Fidelity, and he basically started speaking to me. And at first of all, I like freaked out. We're like, "Whoa, who's speaking to me here?" Right?
Yeah.
But then I quickly caught on. Okay, this is a dude. He's an avatar, and he's speaking because he had a little voice thing above his head. I was like, "Bloody hell!" I was like, "You real?" He was like, "Yeah, I'm real, dude." I was like, "Wow," that kind of spun me out, and we had a little bit of a chuckle about it. And then I just asked him questions for about 20 minutes. And he answered everything just patiently. And I was like, wow, you know what? Like, that really kind of made me want to spend more time. And look, like, high fidelity wasn't for me. It was a research mission because obviously I'm all about decentralization, but it really, really impressed me as an experience. And I think I would love to achieve something similar. Exactly how that's executed, I'm not 100% sure on yet. But even if it is just hiring one or two people, maybe 3 or 4 people that literally just full time kind of are a real life welcome for new users, I think that would be an amazing way to kind of go about onboarding new users and customer service, and that's something that I definitely have in mind. Yeah. DG, interestingly, Decentral Games, who have casinos and poker and loads of other cool stuff in Vegas City, in Decentraland, also have somebody in their casino who is there like full time, is a real user who greets people and speaks to them. and I just think it's really personable and really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that concept too. It reminds me a little bit of just, and I'm sure that you've seen Ready Player One, that kind of, Butler-esque character that's in Ready Player One, where, if you enter a certain zone or a certain building, they're just there, ready to help,
Yep.
answer all your questions. But obviously more of a, in person or, personalized as it gets kind of format there. I think that concept's kind of cool. It's almost taking the kind of community management aspect that we have in our Telegram and Discord and injecting that straight into the Cryptoverse. So
Yeah.
I know that plans for that aren't finalized, but to me that concept just sounds really cool. And ultimately, if you do that, you can even integrate people that have, maybe different language backgrounds as well. So it's not just
Yep.
people that are speaking English, but anybody across the world be able to seek out the avatar that helps them out, speaks their language. I think that concept is cool. I know that's not final, but the idea is really nice to hear.
Yeah, exactly. So the technicalities of how we achieve it aren't final, but I think that there's as a team we've got a fairly general consensus as that that's probably the approach that we'll take. And yeah, is this hybrid solution? It wouldn't make sense to have 1,000 people in every different spot of a Cryptoverse. But certainly the first place where a user goes, the first time they come in, this type of human element I think is really important. And then the hybrid could be that, yeah, you'd have the kind of like, you're talking about the butlers from Ready Player One. I know exactly what you're talking about in certain points of interest around Cryptoverse. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, obviously, like you mentioned, not a team of 1,000 people, but having that almost first person experience when you enter the world, I think that concept is really cool. So thank you for answering that. Now, we already got through all of my questions, all the audience questions that we have for today, which, by the way, Movie Zone, Alex P, Siago U, and Crypto God, please make sure that you provide your Twitter handles in the chat so we can reach out to you after the live stream to coordinate your rewards. Now, Rob, I do want to wrap up here, but before we do, I want to just ask you, is there anything that we didn't touch on in the live stream today that you want to touch on briefly as we kind of sign off of the stream here? Any kind of last minute thoughts?
Well, you've caught me off guard with that one, mate. I mean, I guess honestly, it always kind of seems a little bit cheesy or corny, but I think just a thank you is the honest truth. Like, thank you to obviously the amazing staff that work across our ecosystem for all their hard work in making this possible. And thank you to the community as well, who have decided to support either directly through obtaining land or through indirectly through immersing themselves and being engaged and involved in the ecosystem as well. Just a massive thank you for supporting and believing in the vision. And yeah, just really excited to see the world take shape and look forward to kind of even meeting people inside the metaverse when the time comes as well.
Yeah, which for anybody who maybe is just tuning in, kind of towards the end of the live stream, Rob already mentioned earlier, Q4 of this year, as my dog whines in the background, Q4 of this year, maybe Q1 of next year, be able to put boots on the ground, feet in the Cryptoverse for the first time for early access alpha. So be on the lookout for that. Now, before we sign off, I do want to thank all the community members that did tune into the stream today. We had a really good turnout. Obviously, it is a special time anytime that we can get one of the ChainGuardians, ChainBoost, Cryptoverse founders on the live stream as well. And we had a lot of really good, really solid questions in the stream today. So thank you for everyone for tuning in. Thanks to everyone for participating. If you haven't checked out the newest update on ChainBoost, go to chainboost.io. We just launched our 2.0 rendition where we provide a little bit more of a boost score breakdown, kind of a probability tier system, and a lot of cool new UI and UX adjustments as well. So if you haven't already checked that out, please make sure that you do. Rob, thank you again for tuning in, or thank you again for attending the live stream today. Not tuning in, you're not just watching. You're here, you're answering questions. I know you are extremely busy right now, so I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to, come hang out with me, come hang out with the community, answer some of my questions and answer their questions. So Rob, thank you again. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks very much, Ryan. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Really appreciate it. Cheers, guys.
And if you had your questions answered, make sure that you follow ChainBoost on Twitter. Put your handles in the chat if you had your questions answered, that we can reach out to you after the stream. All right, guys. Thank you all for attending. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Take it easy, guys.
注がれた光の雨瞳に映ったこの世界を守るため立ち向かうそれは心もやせがやせの隅でまた
づけろ
憎しみや恨みを生んでしまうのかもしれない正解のない世界に苦しんでそれでも受け止め我らは叫ばなければいけないと心がうついて思い描いた自由への勝利に僕のエゴであろう君の願いであろうそれがなめることもあれと悔いやくなれることもいつの日かできな信じたのは一輪の花
触れてくれてその時に
あがいてもがいてまみれ迷いながらも概念の中にわずか輝くそれをその手に掴み取り勝ち取るためには
また立ち上がる
思い描いた自由への勝利的な僕の血肉となり君の魂となりそれを固めることはあれと悔いやくなれることもいつの日か的な熱さ探せが大輪の花永遠の中で掴んだ未来を注がれた光の